Hello, and welcome to the Thriving Brain podcast, where we explore the fascinating intersection of brain science, well being, and leadership. I'm your host, Dr. J. Kumar. As we celebrate Women's History Month, today's episode highlights the resilience, strength, and transformative power of women in turning adversity into purpose. Throughout history, women have faced immense challenges with both courage and determination. Our guest, Emily Zarecki, is a testament to these very qualities. After the sudden loss of her husband and her own health battle, Emily refused to let hardship define her. Instead, she channeled her challenges into a powerful story of purpose, advocacy, and leadership, beautifully captured in her memoir, Golden Scars. An accomplished communications professional and passionate advocate for women's health, Emily's journey will inspire you to transform your scars into strengths. Emily, welcome to the Thriving Brain as part of the One to Watch series. It's a genuine pleasure having you here today, especially as we mark International Women's Day this month.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor.
So let's talk about, I always ask the very first question I pose to my guest is their story. And you have a very powerful story about that really exemplifies the power of resilience and being able to control your circumstances in life. So let's start with having you share your journey that is, I think, both deeply personal and yet universally powerful. You faced two very significant life challenges or events in your life. Let's have you share to our listeners what those were and how these events formed and shaped your personal and professional journey.
Absolutely. So my story really starts about 16 years ago. My husband Steve was battling mental health challenges, and he was very open with me about those, even when we had started dating years prior. But it was also a very kind of private battle for him as well. He was doing all of the things he should do to get well. He saw his doctor, did counseling when it was needed, took the prescribed medications, kind of doing everything he was supposed to do. But I think the disease became bigger than he was, and he took his life in July of 2009. We were, married almost 10 years, had three little children, and there I was in, the blink of an eye, having such a complete shift in my life of, going off to work one day thinking, times were difficult and he was struggling, but never imagining I was going to come home from work and find that he was gone.
Mhm.
It was just a complete, shock, and then trying to find my kind of way forward as a, 35-year-old widow, adding, a different title, calling myself a widow, and having three young children. My son had just turned 8 years old, and I have twin daughters who were 4.
Mm.
So it was like the world stopped, really, as so many, other things kept going on. It felt like my world just stopped, and, I needed to figure out what's next and how to protect my kids, but also continue, working and doing all of the things, but without my husband. And it was a shock, and years after was just so challenging, trying to just find my way and kind of create that new normal.
I can completely empathize with your situation. As many of my listeners here know, I write about this very openly in my book. My mother died from suicide when I was 27. So I share that grief and the trauma of, having a family member, in this case, my mom, in your case, your husband, to make this decision to take their own life. Very challenging, very difficult. But In addition to the tragedy of your husband taking his life through suicide, you also had another very powerful life event that helped transform your life. Maybe share about that also.
I did absolutely. So it was, several years later, was going about, I was always, really good. I think it was thanks to having my mother, who was a nurse, always, staying on top of the different screenings and, made sure I, had my annual mammograms. Because we had family history, I did, start the mammograms earlier than many typically would. And it was during 2020, the, crazy year that was, I had, put my mammogram off. I thought, I don't want to go into the hospital if I don't have to. But as it was getting later in the year, I thought I really need to. I kind of, could hear my mom almost really nudging me. And I was told I would need to come back from additional testing for some additional testing and had to do a biopsy. There was something that they saw, although the radiologist said, I'm sure this is nothing. I mean, she even said, I'm 90% sure this is just a benign mass, but we've got to go through and get the right testing, and had a biopsy done. And I was really, really surprised when I got the call and learned that I had breast cancer.
This is the power of resilience. This is, I think, just the intention for you writing your memoir, Golden Scars, is really about the idea of how we can overcome adversity and channel the power of resilience. What helped you develop this resilient mindset?
It definitely took time. And I think it was, really kind of reflecting back on, after, some time had happened, first after my husband died, and, taking some time to really, reflect back on, what had happened. And certainly as I was processing everything and, trying to heal and move forward, there, was definitely a time where I, just could look back and think, wow, something I couldn't imagine getting through in those early days, months, even, first year. It just seemed completely insurmountable about how I was going to keep going in life, keep doing all of this, but, on my own, feeling like there was, so much responsibility, on myself to, keep one step in front of one foot in front of the other, but also as I was raising my young children. But I think in kind of looking back after some time had passed and saying like, okay, I have done this. I don't like it. If it were my choice, this, certainly wouldn't have happened. But to see that, okay, the kids and I are doing okay. We're moving forward. We had, a little bit after that had moved into a new house and felt like we were kind of starting anew. And so I really found that in, looking back and really taking some time to look at what I, had gone through, and being able to kind of draw some strength from that to be able to keep moving forward.
Yeah. I'm reminded as you share your story, and I talk about this also in my book. There's a beautiful, powerful quote from the mystic, the Sufi mystic Rumi, and I'm paraphrasing here, who says, "The wound is the place where the light enters the soul."
Yes, I
So it
love that
really
quote.
is. It is such a, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but the essence is that our wounds really need to be, our scars, our wounds are really an opportunity for us to embody this sense of resilience, and because this podcast talks about brain science, reveals that we're not born with the resilience, but we have the capacity in our neural network, our neurobiology, to build this resilient mindset in which you did.
Yes.
Since we're talking in this month, Women's History Month and International Women's Days coming up soon for us also, for women leaders facing their own challenges, what practical advice do you have for building resilience and navigating uncertainty you can maybe offer to other women leaders?
Absolutely. I think one important, really first step is to really give yourself some grace. Depending on what it is that you're navigating, if it's, is a challenging thing at work, or if it is something, in the personal life where you really can't these days really separate the personal from the professional. I think it's really hard. I remember days in my early career, and there was that almost that sentiment of kind of leave your personal stuff at the door. You've got to come in, do your job, and kind of pick it up on the way out. And there really isn't such a thing anymore. And I do hope, and I think I have seen, in some workplaces there is that acknowledgement. And particularly, I think the pandemic really opened a lot of people's eyes about, we are people going through so many different things that it's just so hard to compartmentalize. So I really encourage women to first, give yourself grace that you're perhaps navigating something you've never been through before. And, you know, as you're, taking steps in, making decisions to, navigate that challenge, recognizing that, you've never done this before. You may, make some missteps, but, keep kind of moving forward. Absolutely. Finding that the support networks are so very important, and really having that courage to be able to open up to people and share what's going on. It's so that you can have that support. And I know I found so often, especially in the early days of, grieving and, finding my way, beyond, past my husband's death was, just having that time to seek out that support and, open up to people about what was going on. Because too often I did find myself trying to just do it all on my own.
Yeah.
And there's the book, and I know I'm not going to get the title right, but the body keeps score.
Yes. Yes,
I
exactly.
absolutely found myself when I was trying to do it all. I would find, I mean, I ended up almost, passing out in a grocery store one time,
Mm.
and, getting, headaches and, things where I was just realized like, I'm trying to do it all myself. And as hard as it is, asking for help
Yeah.
is,
And this
is
idea,
crucial.
and what you just said is so beautifully astute. And this idea is that we sometimes need to give ourselves permission, not just, not to grieve, but also to be vulnerable and to reach out and seek support when needed.
Yes,
And it's
absolutely.
really this idea, since my, wheelhouse is brain science and behavior, there's this idea which has emerged. It's been there for a while, but I think it really took off post-pandemic. And it's a term that we call post-traumatic growth. And it's this idea, and all of us probably know, I've never broken a bone personally, but we know that when a bone is broken, when it heals, it becomes stronger and more resilient and more firm, more durable, if you will. I feel the same, and not I, but this is where the brain science behavioral research affirms that the same is also true for our psyche. When we are faced with a traumatic situation, whether it's the loss of a spouse, or any loved one, or when you're dealt a blow about having a medical scare, if you will, or situation in your case with breast cancer, they can teach us.